Maxwell Rothschild stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office, 60 stories above the bustling streets of New York. The city sprawled before him, a concrete jungle he'd conquered time and time again. Yet today, it felt like a mocking reminder of his own limitations. He turned away from the view, his reflection in the polished glass catching his eye. At 42, he was the very picture of success-tailored Tom Ford suit, Patek Philippe watch, and a commanding presence that could make Wall Street titans quiver. But behind the facade of the ruthless hedge fund manager lay a secret that money couldn't solve. The door to his office opened, and his assistant Sarah stepped in. "Mr. Rothschild, your 2 o'clock is here, and the results from the clinic arrived." Maxwell's jaw tightened. He'd been dreading this moment for weeks. "Send them in, and leave the envelope on my desk." As Sarah left, Maxwell straightened his tie and schooled his features into a mask of cool indifference. Moments later, a group of executives filed in, eager to pitch their latest investment opportunity. For the next hour, Maxwell played his part to perfection. He dissected their proposal, asking razor-sharp questions that left them scrambling. But his mind was elsewhere, drawn inexorably to the innocent-looking envelope on his desk. As soon as the meeting ended and the door closed behind the last executive, Maxwell practically lunged for the envelope. With trembling fingers, he tore it open and scanned the contents. The words blurred before his eyes, but one phrase stood out in stark clarity. "Confirmed diagnosis of male infertility." Maxwell sank into his chair, the paper clutched in his hand. The irony wasn't lost on him. He, who could make millions with a single phone call, was powerless in the face of biology. His father's words echoed in his mind. "Promise me you'll give me a grandchild." A bitter laugh escaped his lips. How could he fulfill that promise now? The Rothschild legacy, built over generations, would end with him. The intercom buzzed, jolting him from his thoughts. Sarah's voice came through, tinged with concern. "Mr. Rothschild? Your brother Alex is on line 1. He says it's urgent." Maxwell closed his eyes, steeling himself. Alex, the family's black sheep, calling out of the blue. This day just kept getting better. He picked up the phone. "Alex? What's wrong?" His brother's voice, crackling with a bad connection, filled the line. "Max, it's Dad. The doctors say he doesn't have much time left." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Maxwell gripped the edge of his desk, his knuckles turning white. "I'll be right there," he managed to say before hanging up. As he grabbed his coat and rushed out of the office, Maxwell's mind raced. Time was running out. He needed an heir, a way to fulfill his promise and secure the Rothschild legacy. Little did he know, desperation would soon drive him to cross lines he never thought he'd cross. The October wind whipped through Central Park, sending leaves skittering across the paths and chilling Maxwell to the bone. He walked aimlessly, his usual purposeful stride replaced by a meandering gait that matched his scattered thoughts. It had been 3 days since his father's condition had worsened. 3 days of sitting by a hospital bed, watching machines breathe for the man who had always seemed invincible. 3 days of dodging questions about his own future, about carrying on the family name. Maxwell found himself in a less manicured area of the park, where the carefully maintained paths gave way to worn dirt tracks. The fading daylight cast long shadows, and the usual joggers and tourists were nowhere to be seen. That's when he saw her. She was huddled on a bench, a threadbare blanket pulled tight around her shoulders. Even from a distance, Maxwell could see she was young, far too young to be out here alone as night fell. He approached cautiously, his expensive shoes crunching on the gravel path. The girl's head snapped up at the sound, wariness etched on her face. "Are you all right?" Maxwell asked, stopping a respectful distance away. The girl eyed him suspiciously. Up close, he could see that beneath the dirt and fatigue, she was strikingly beautiful. Her eyes, a startling shade of green, seemed to look right through him. "I'm fine," she said, her voice hoarse. "Just resting." Maxwell nodded, knowing it was a lie but unsure how to proceed. He was about to turn away when he noticed something, a slight swell beneath her oversized sweater. "You're pregnant," he blurted out before he could stop himself. The girl's hand instinctively went to her stomach, a mix of fear and defiance flashing across her face. "What's it to you?" Maxwell held up his hands placatingly. "Nothing. Do you have somewhere to go? It's getting cold out here." She laughed bitterly. "Yeah, I've got a penthouse on Fifth Avenue. I just like to rough it out here for fun." The sarcasm was biting, but Maxwell barely noticed. His mind was racing, a plan forming that he knew was insane, unethical, and possibly illegal. But he was a desperate man, and desperate men do desperate things. "What's your name?" he asked softly. She hesitated, then seemed to deflate slightly. "Lily." "Lily," Maxwell repeated, tasting the name. "I'm Maxwell, and I think maybe we can help each other." Lily's eyes narrowed. "What are you talking about?" Maxwell took a deep breath. "I'm going to make you an offer, Lily, one that could change both our lives. But first, I need you to trust me enough to hear me out. Can you do that?" For a long moment, Lily just stared at him. Maxwell could almost see the war being waged behind her eyes, survival instinct versus the promise of hope. Finally, she nodded. "I'm listening." As the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the Manhattan skyline, Maxwell began to outline his proposition. With each word, he could feel himself crossing a line, entering a moral gray area from which there might be no return. But as he looked at Lily, at the life growing inside her, he saw a chance, his only chance, to fulfill his promise and secure his family's legacy. What he couldn't have known then was how this desperate encounter would change not just his life, but the very meaning of family itself. The 24-hour diner on the edge of Central Park was nearly empty, its harsh fluorescent lights a stark contrast to the darkness outside. Maxwell sat across from Lily in a worn vinyl booth, watching as she devoured a stack of pancakes with the fervor of someone who hadn't eaten a proper meal in days. He waited until she had slowed down before speaking. "So, Lily, tell me about yourself. How did you end up here?" Lily wiped her mouth with a paper napkin, her eyes darting to the exit as if calculating her escape route. "It's a long story," she said warily, "and not a very happy one." Maxwell nodded, his voice softening. "I understand, but I need to know if I'm going to help you." She sighed, pushing her plate away. "Fine. Short version? I grew up in foster care, bounced around a lot, never really had a place to call home. Aged out of the system at 18 with no support, no family. Thought I'd found love, but..." Her hand unconsciously went to her stomach. "Turns out, I just found another user who split as soon as he found out I was pregnant." The bitterness in her voice was palpable, and Maxwell felt a twinge of guilt for what he was about to propose, but he pressed on. "What if I told you I could change all that? Give you a life of comfort, security, the best medical care for you and your baby?" Lily's eyes narrowed. "And what would I have to do for all that? Because I'm not that kind of girl, mister." Maxwell shook his head quickly. "No, nothing like that. What I'm proposing is an arrangement. A mutually beneficial one." He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "I need an heir, Lily. Someone to carry on my family name. And you need a future for yourself and your child." Lily's eyes widened as understanding dawned. "You want my baby?" "I want to give your baby a life of opportunity," Maxwell corrected. "And in exchange, I'll make sure you're taken care of for the rest of your life." The diner fell silent, save for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic. Lily stared at Maxwell, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. "This is crazy," she whispered. "You're crazy." Maxwell nodded. "Maybe. But I'm also serious. Think about it, Lily. Your child would want for nothing. The best schools, the best opportunities. And you'd never have to worry about ending up on that park bench again." Lily's hands trembled as she reached for her water glass. "And what happens to me after the baby is born? You just discard me?" "No," Maxwell said firmly. "You'd be part of the child's life. We'd work out the details. But I promise you, I'm not looking to separate a mother from her child. I'm looking to provide a family for both of you." Lily fell silent, her gaze distant. Maxwell could almost see the wheels turning in her head, weighing the pros and cons of this impossible situation. Finally, she looked at him, her green eyes filled with a mixture of fear and determination. "I need time to think about this." Maxwell nodded, sliding a business card across the table. "Take all the time you need. But remember, Lily, this offer won't last forever." As Lily pocketed the card and slipped out of the diner, Maxwell watched her go, wondering if he had just made the biggest mistake of his life, or possibly saved it. He pulled out his phone, staring at the screen for a long moment before dialing a familiar number. "Sarah, I need you to set up a meeting with our legal team first thing tomorrow, and book a suite at the plaza. We may be having a guest soon." As he hung up, Maxwell caught his reflection in the diner's window. The man staring back at him looked older, more careworn than he had just hours ago. He wondered if his father would be proud of what he was doing, or if he'd be ashamed. But then he remembered the look in Lily's eyes, that glimmer of hope beneath the wariness, and he knew he couldn't back out now. For better or worse, their fates were now intertwined. As Maxwell stepped out into the cool night air, he felt as if he was standing on the edge of a precipice. One step forward and there would be no going back. But with his father's life hanging in the balance and the Rothschild legacy on his shoulders, he knew he had no choice but to take that step. The game was on, and the stakes had never been higher. The penthouse suite at the Plaza Hotel was a world away from the park bench where Maxwell had found Lily just a week ago. Now, as he watched her run her fingers over the silk curtains and marble countertops, he could hardly believe it was the same person. "This is where I'll be staying?" Lily asked, her voice a mixture of awe and disbelief. Maxwell nodded, trying to ignore the twinge of guilt in his chest. "For now, we'll find a more permanent arrangement once things are settled." Lily turned to face him, her expression suddenly serious. "I want everything in writing. The agreement, the conditions, all of it." "Of course," Maxwell replied, pulling out a thick envelope from his briefcase. "My lawyers have drawn up a contract. Take your time to read it, and we can discuss any concerns you have." As Lily pored over the document, Maxwell found himself studying her. Clean and well-rested, she looked even younger than he had initially thought. The realization made him uncomfortable, but he pushed the feeling aside. This was business, he reminded himself. A transaction, nothing more. "What about medical care?" Lily asked, looking up from the papers. "It's all covered," Maxwell assured her. "You have an appointment with the top obstetrician in the city tomorrow. We'll make sure you and the baby are in perfect health." Lily nodded, returning to the contract. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the soft rustle of papers. Finally, she set the document down. "Okay, I'll do it." Maxwell let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "You're sure?" "No," Lily said with a wry smile. "But I'm sure this is better than the alternative, for me and for my baby." As she signed the contract, Maxwell felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He had done it. He had secured an heir, fulfilled his promise to his father. Everything would be all right now. Or so he thought. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Lily was thrust into a world of luxury she had never known: designer clothes, gourmet meals, and round-the-clock care. Maxwell, for his part, found himself increasingly involved in her day-to-day life. He told himself it was just to ensure the smooth running of their arrangement. But as days turned to weeks, he found himself looking forward to their conversations, to hearing about her doctor's appointments, to seeing her face light up at some new discovery in her gilded world. One evening, as they sat on the penthouse balcony watching the sunset over Central Park, Lily turned to him with a bemused expression. "You know, when I imagined being whisked away by a rich guy, I always pictured yachts and private islands, not prenatal vitamins and Lamaze classes." Maxwell chuckled, surprising himself. When was the last time he had laughed so easily? "Sorry to disappoint. I can arrange a yacht if you'd like." Lily shook her head, smiling. "Nah, I'm good. This is nice." Her smile faded slightly. "Sometimes I forget this isn't real, you know, that this isn't my life." The words hit Maxwell like a punch to the gut. He opened his mouth to respond, but before he could, Lily gasped, her hand flying to her stomach. "Lily? What's wrong?" Maxwell was on his feet in an instant, panic rising in his throat. But Lily was smiling, tears in her eyes. "Nothing's wrong. The baby. I felt it move." Without thinking, Maxwell knelt beside her, his hand hovering uncertainly over her belly. Lily took his hand and placed it gently on the swell of her stomach. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a flutter, so faint he almost missed it. Maxwell looked up at Lily, his eyes wide with wonder. In that moment, something shifted. The carefully constructed walls between them, the notion that this was just a business arrangement, began to crumble. As the city lights began to twinkle in the gathering dusk, Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The tiny life growing beneath their joined hands said everything that words couldn't. While Maxwell and Lily were caught up in their unexpected moment of connection, across town, another Rothschild was grappling with his own demons. Alex Rothschild sat in a dimly lit bar, nursing a glass of scotch. The TV above the bar droned on about some corporate scandal, but Alex wasn't listening. His mind was thousands of miles away, back in the refugee camps of South Sudan where he'd spent the last 5 years. He'd left New York and the suffocating expectations of the Rothschild name behind, determined to make a difference in the world. And for a while, he had. But now, with his father's health failing, he found himself pulled back into the orbit of family duty. His phone buzzed, displaying a message from Maxwell. "We need to talk. It's about Dad." Alex sighed, downing the last of his scotch. He'd been avoiding this conversation for days, but he knew he couldn't put it off any longer. 20 minutes later, he was stepping into Maxwell's office, the familiar scent of leather and power washing over him. "Alex," Maxwell said, rising from behind his desk. "Thanks for coming." Alex nodded, taking in his brother's appearance. Maxwell looked tired, the weight of responsibility etched into the lines around his eyes. "What's going on, Max? How's Dad?" Maxwell sank back into his chair, gesturing for Alex to sit. "Not good. The doctors are saying it's a matter of weeks now, maybe days." Alex felt a lump form in his throat. Despite their differences, the thought of losing their father was devastating. "What can I do?" "That's what I wanted to talk to you about," Maxwell said, leaning forward. "Dad's been asking for you. He wants to see both of us together." Alex tensed. "Max, you know how I feel about—" "I know," Maxwell interrupted. "But this isn't about the company or the family legacy. This is about saying goodbye to our father." The brothers fell silent, years of unspoken resentments and misunderstandings hanging between them. Finally, Alex nodded. "Okay, when—" "Tomorrow," Maxwell said. "There's something else you should know before we go." He hesitated, then plunged ahead. "I've made some arrangements to secure the family's future." Alex's eyes narrowed. "What kind of arrangements?" Maxwell took a deep breath and began to explain about Lily and their agreement. As he spoke, he watched his brother's expression shift from confusion to disbelief to anger. "Are you out of your mind?" Alex exploded when Maxwell finished. "You can't just buy a baby, Max. This isn't some business deal you can negotiate." "You don't understand," Maxwell shot back. "This is about more than just an heir. It's about giving a child and its mother a chance at a better life." "And what about the ethical implications, the legal risks?" Alex pressed. "Have you even thought about what this could do to the family if it gets out?" Maxwell's jaw clenched. "I've considered every angle. The lawyers have assured me." "The lawyers?" Alex interrupted with a bitter laugh. "Right. Because if the lawyers say it's okay, then it must be fine. Just like all those deals Dad made that looked great on paper but left people's lives in ruins." The words hung in the air between them, a stark reminder of the legacy they'd both tried to escape in their own ways. Maxwell slumped in his chair, suddenly looking every bit his age. "What would you have me do, Alex? Let the Rothschild name die out? Watch everything Dad built crumble?" Alex sighed, the fight draining out of him. "I don't know, Max, but this can't be the answer." Before Maxwell could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression softening. "It's Lily. She has another doctor's appointment tomorrow." Alex studied his brother, noting the subtle change in his demeanor at the mention of Lily's name. "You care about her, don't you? This isn't just about the baby anymore." Maxwell looked up, a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. I don't know what this is anymore, Alex. But I can't back out now. I made a promise." Alex stood, moving to the window. The city sprawled out before him, a glittering tapestry of lights and shadows. He thought about the people he'd left behind in Africa, the lives he'd tried to improve. And now, here was his brother, trying to do the same thing in his own misguided way. "I'll go with you tomorrow," Alex said finally. "To see Dad. And I want to meet Lily." Maxwell looked up, surprised. "You do?" Alex nodded. "If she's going to be part of this family, however unconventionally, I should at least know who she is." As the brothers parted ways that night, neither of them could shake the feeling that they were standing on the precipice of something monumental. The Rothschild legacy was about to be redefined, for better or for worse. The next day dawned gray and overcast, matching the somber mood as Maxwell and Alex made their way to the hospital. The sterile corridors seemed to stretch endlessly, each step bringing them closer to a reality they weren't sure they were ready to face. Outside their father's room, they paused. Maxwell turned to Alex, his voice low. "Are you ready for this?" Alex nodded, steeling himself. "As ready as I'll ever be." They entered the room to find Abraham Rothschild propped up in bed, looking frailer than either of them had ever seen him. But his eyes, those piercing blue eyes that had struck fear into boardrooms across the globe, were as sharp as ever. "My boys," Abraham said, his voice weak but filled with warmth. "You came." Maxwell and Alex moved to either side of the bed, each taking one of their father's hands. "Of course we came, Dad," Maxwell said softly. Abraham's gaze moved between his sons, a lifetime of memories reflected in his eyes. "I owe you both an apology," he said, surprising them. "I've made many mistakes, but my greatest was in how I raised you." Alex and Maxwell exchanged shocked glances. This was not the stern, unyielding father they knew. "Maxwell," Abraham continued, "I pushed you too hard, made you believe that success and legacy were all that mattered. And Alex, I dismissed your passions, your desire to make a real difference in the world. I was wrong." The brothers listened in stunned silence as their father continued. "The Rothschild name. It's both a blessing and a curse. I realize that now. But it's not about the money or the power. It's about the good we can do, the lives we can change." He squeezed their hands weakly. "Whatever happens after I'm gone, promise me you'll remember that. Promise me you'll find a way to use the Rothschild legacy for something greater than just making money." Maxwell felt tears pricking at his eyes. "We promise, Dad." Abraham nodded, seeming to relax. "Good. Now, Maxwell, tell me about this grandchild I hear is on the way." Maxwell froze, shooting a panicked look at Alex. How did his father know? "It's okay, son," Abraham said, a hint of his old shrewdness in his smile. "I may be dying, but I still have my sources. Tell me about the mother." And so, haltingly at first, then with growing confidence, Maxwell told his father about Lily. About their unconventional arrangement, yes, but also about her strength, her kindness, the way she'd begun to change how he saw the world. As he spoke, Alex watched his brother closely. The mask of the ruthless businessman was gone, replaced by something softer, more vulnerable. It was a side of Maxwell he hadn't seen in years. When Maxwell finished, Abraham was quiet for a long moment. Then he chuckled softly. "Well, it seems the Rothschild flair for the dramatic lives on. But Maxwell, are you sure you know what you're doing?" Maxwell shook his head. "Honestly, Dad, I'm not sure of anything anymore, except that I want to do right by Lily and the baby." Abraham nodded. "Then that's what matters. The rest you'll figure out." He turned to Alex. "And you, my boy? What do you think of all this?" Alex sighed. "I think it's crazy and reckless and probably illegal." He paused, looking at Maxwell. "But I also think it might be exactly what this family needs. A chance to redefine what being a Rothschild means." Abraham smiled, a genuine smile that took years off his face. "Well said. Both of you, listen to me. The Rothschild name has opened doors for us, given us opportunities others can only dream of. But it's also been a burden, an expectation that's nearly crushed you both. It's time for that to change." He closed his eyes, suddenly looking very tired. "I don't have much time left, but I die happy knowing that the future of our family is in your hands. Together you can build something greater than I ever could." As if on cue, Maxwell's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then at his father and brother. "It's Lily. She's on her way to the doctor's office." Abraham nodded. "Go, both of you. Meet this young woman who's about to change all our lives." The brothers stood, each leaning down to embrace their father. As they reached the door, Abraham called out one last time, "Remember, boys, family is more than blood. It's the people we choose, the lives we touch. Don't ever forget that." As Maxwell and Alex left the hospital, a weight seemed to lift from their shoulders. The future was uncertain, fraught with challenges they could only begin to imagine. But for the first time in years, they faced it not as rivals, but as brothers. Together, they set off to meet Lily, unaware that their lives were about to change in ways they could never have predicted. The waiting room of New York Presbyterian's maternity ward was a far cry from the luxury of the Rothschild offices. Maxwell paced relentlessly, his expensive shoes squeaking on the linoleum floor, while Alex sat quietly, observing the other expectant parents around them. "She'll be okay," Alex said, more to break the silence than out of any real certainty. "They both will." Maxwell stopped pacing, running a hand through his disheveled hair. "This is my fault," he muttered. "I pushed too hard, tried to control everything, and now—" He couldn't finish the sentence, the fear of what might happen too overwhelming to voice. Alex stood, placing a hand on his brother's shoulder. "Max, listen to me. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. Just like when we were kids, remember?" Maxwell looked at his brother, really looked at him for the first time since he'd returned. Gone was the reckless younger sibling he remembered. In his place stood a man tempered by experience, offering not judgment but support. Before Maxwell could respond, a nurse approached them. "Mr. Rothschild, Lily's asking for you." Maxwell nodded, then turned to Alex. "Will you?" "Go," Alex said. "I'll be right here." Maxwell followed the nurse down the corridor, his heart pounding. When he entered the examination room, he found Lily sitting on the edge of the bed, her face pale but composed. "Hey," she said softly. "I didn't expect you to come." Maxwell moved to her side, surprising himself by taking her hand. "Of course I came. Are you okay? Is the baby?" Lily managed a small smile. "We're both fine. It was just some Braxton Hicks contractions. False alarm." Relief washed over Maxwell, so intense it made him dizzy. He sank onto the bed beside her, still holding her hand. "I was so scared," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Lily squeezed his hand. "Me too. But Max, this isn't just about the baby anymore, is it?" Maxwell looked up, meeting her eyes. In that moment, all the walls he'd built, all the pretenses of their arrangement, crumbled away. "No," he said softly. "It's not." Meanwhile, in the waiting room, Alex found himself in conversation with an elderly woman who'd been watching him curiously. "First-time father?" she asked kindly. Alex shook his head. "No, it's complicated. My brother's the father, sort of." The woman raised an eyebrow. "Sort of? Young man, in my experience, there's no sort of when it comes to family. You either are or you aren't." Alex considered her words. "I suppose you're right. It's just, our family has always been about bloodlines and legacy. This situation is unconventional." The woman chuckled. "Honey, all families are unconventional in their own way. What matters is love. The rest is just details." As Alex pondered this, Maxwell returned with Lily. Alex stood, finally getting a good look at the woman who had turned their lives upside down. Lily was younger than he'd expected, with a quiet strength in her green eyes that spoke of a life lived far beyond her years. She met his gaze steadily, a hint of defiance in her chin. "You must be Alex," she said. "I've heard a lot about you." Alex nodded, extending his hand. "And I've heard a lot about you, Lily. It's good to finally meet you." As they shook hands, Alex felt a shift in the air, as if pieces of a puzzle were finally falling into place. Maxwell watched the interaction nervously, but he needn't have worried. Within minutes, Alex and Lily were deep in conversation about his work in Africa, her eyes alight with genuine interest. As they left the hospital, Maxwell found himself hanging back, watching his brother and Lily walk ahead, still chatting animatedly. The sight stirred something in him, a longing for connection, for family in its truest sense. In that moment, Maxwell made a decision. This charade, this arrangement, it had to end. He needed to be honest, with Lily, with his family, and most importantly, with himself. But before he could voice these thoughts, his phone rang. The caller ID made his blood run cold. Jeremiah Rothschild, his uncle and longtime rival for control of the family business. "Maxwell, my boy," came the smooth, calculating voice. "We need to talk. It seems there have been some Interesting developments in the family. As Maxwell listened to his uncle's thinly veiled threats, he realized that the game had changed. The stakes were no longer just about an heir or the family legacy. Now, it was about protecting the fragile new bonds that were forming, the true legacy of the Rothschild name. Hanging up the phone, Maxwell quickened his pace to catch up with Alex and Lily. Whatever storm was coming, they would weather it together. Because that's what family did. Real family. Not the kind built on money and power, but the kind forged through shared struggles and unexpected connections. The Rothschild mansion, once a symbol of power and prestige, now felt like a powder keg waiting to explode. Jeremiah Rothschild sat at the head of the ornate dining table, his fingers steepled as he regarded his nephews with cold calculation. "So," he began, his voice silky smooth, "shall we discuss the elephant in the room? Or should I say, the pregnant woman in the penthouse?" Maxwell's jaw clenched, while Alex shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The brothers exchanged a quick glance, a silent agreement passing between them. "Uncle Jerry," Maxwell started, "I can explain." "Oh, I'm sure you can," Jeremiah interrupted, a predatory smile playing on his lips. "You've always been good at explaining things, Maxwell. Spinning tales, making deals. But this time, I'm afraid you've outdone yourself." He slid a folder across the table. Maxwell opened it with trembling hands, his face paling as he saw its contents. Surveillance photos of him and Lily, copies of the contract they'd signed, detailed reports of Lily's background. "How did you—" Maxwell began, but Jeremiah cut him off again. "Did you really think you could pull off something like this without anyone noticing? I've been watching you, Maxwell, waiting for you to make a mistake. And oh, what a mistake you've made." Alex leaned forward, his voice tight. "What do you want, Uncle Jerry?" Jeremiah's smile widened. "What I've always wanted, dear nephew. Control of Rothschild Enterprises. Your father's been holding on to the reins for far too long, and you two, well, you're not exactly fit to take over, are you?" He turned his gaze to Maxwell. "One son who's so desperate for an heir he'd commit fraud, and another who'd rather play savior in Africa than take his place in the family business." "You can't just take the company," Maxwell argued, but his voice lacked conviction. "Can't I?" Jeremiah countered. "Once the board hears about this little scandal, once the press gets wind of the great Maxwell Rothschild's deception, well, I'd say my path to the top becomes quite clear." The room fell silent, the weight of Jeremiah's threats hanging heavy in the air. It was Alex who finally broke the silence, his voice calm but firm. "You're forgetting something, Uncle Jerry. Dad's still alive. He's still the majority shareholder." Jeremiah's smile never faltered. "For now. But we all know it's only a matter of time. And when that sad day comes, decisions will need to be made quickly. The company can't afford a scandal after all." He stood, buttoning his jacket with practiced ease. "You have a choice to make, boys. Step aside gracefully. Let me take control, and I'll make sure this whole messy situation disappears. Or fight me, and watch everything your father built crumble around you." With that, he left, the echo of his footsteps fading down the hallway. The brothers sat in stunned silence for a moment before Maxwell exploded. "Damn it!" he shouted, slamming his fist on the table. "He's been planning this all along, waiting for me to screw up." Alex watched his brother, a plan already forming in his mind. "Max, listen to me. We're not beaten yet, but we need to move fast, and we need to be smart." Maxwell looked up, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. "What are you thinking?" "First," Alex said, standing up, "we need to tell Lily everything. No more secrets, no more lies. If we're going to fight this, we need to be united." Maxwell nodded slowly, the realization of what he needed to do settling over him. "You're right. She deserves the truth. All of it." As they left the mansion, neither brother noticed the sleek black car parked across the street, nor the man inside speaking urgently into a phone. "Mr. Rothschild," the man said. "They're on the move. What are your orders?" Jeremiah's voice crackled through the speaker. "Follow them. I want to know every move they make. This game is far from over." The Plaza's penthouse suite, once a symbol of their arrangement, now felt confining as Maxwell and Alex faced Lily. She sat on the plush sofa, her hands resting protectively over her swollen belly, her eyes moving between the brothers with growing concern. "What's going on?" she asked, her voice steady despite the tension in the room. "You both look like you've seen a ghost." Maxwell took a deep breath, steeling himself for what he was about to do. "Lily, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you from the beginning." And so, with Alex's supportive presence beside him, Maxwell laid bare the whole truth. He spoke of the family's expectations, his own desperation to secure an heir, and the ruthless uncle who now threatened to tear everything apart. As he talked, Lily's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief to anger. When Maxwell finally fell silent, the room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. "Let me get this straight," Lily said, her voice dangerously low. "You didn't just offer me a better life out of the goodness of your heart. You were buying a baby, an heir." Maxwell flinched at her words but didn't deny them. "At first, yes. But Lily, you have to believe me. It's become so much more than that." Lily stood abruptly, pacing the room. "How can I believe anything you say? This whole thing, everything between us, it's all been based on a lie." Alex stepped forward, his voice gentle. "Lily, I know this is a lot to take in, but I've seen how my brother has changed since meeting you. The man standing before you now is not the same one who made that initial offer." Lily looked at Alex, then back at Maxwell. "And what about me? What about our child? Are we just pawns in your family's power games?" Maxwell moved towards her, his eyes pleading. "No, Lily. You and the baby. You're everything to me now. I know I've made mistakes, horrible mistakes, but I want to make it right." Lily's hand went to her stomach as the baby kicked, a reminder of the innocent life caught in the middle of this mess. She took a shaky breath, trying to process everything she'd just learned. "I need time," she said finally. "Time to think, to figure out what this means for me. For us." Maxwell nodded, relief and fear warring in his chest. "Of course. Whatever you need." As Lily retreated to the bedroom, closing the door softly behind her, the brothers were left standing in the living room, the weight of their family's legacy hanging heavily between them. "What now?" Alex asked, breaking the silence. Maxwell ran a hand through his hair, looking more vulnerable than Alex had ever seen him. "Now we fight. For the company, for our family's name. But more importantly, for Lily and the baby. They're what matters most." Alex nodded, a small smile playing at his lips. "You know, a few months ago, I never would have believed those words could come out of your mouth." Maxwell chuckled ruefully. "A few months ago, I wouldn't have believed it either." As the brothers began to strategize, formulating a plan to counter Jeremiah's threats, neither of them noticed the blinking light of the small camera hidden in the corner of the room. In his office across town, Jeremiah Rothschild leaned back in his chair, a triumphant smile on his face as he listened to every word. Meanwhile, in the bedroom, Lily sat on the edge of the bed, her mind reeling from the revelations of the evening. Her hand absently stroked her belly as she tried to sort through her turbulent emotions. She thought back to that night in the park, to the desperation that had led her to accept Maxwell's offer. She'd been so focused on survival, on giving her child a better life than she'd had, that she'd willingly walked into this gilded cage. But somewhere along the way, the cage had become a home, and Maxwell, the man she'd seen as her ticket to a better life, had become… what? A friend? A partner? Something more? Lily closed her eyes, remembering the feel of Maxwell's hand on her stomach, the wonder in his eyes when they'd felt the baby kick. Those moments hadn't been fake. They couldn't have been. As the baby stirred within her, Lily made a decision. She wouldn't run, wouldn't hide from this. Whatever came next, she would face it head on, for herself and for her child. Opening her eyes, Lily stood and moved to the door. It was time to rejoin the brothers, to be a part of whatever plan they were concocting. Because, like it or not, she was a part of this now, a part of this family. And family, she was learning, stuck together, no matter what. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity, as Maxwell, Alex, and Lily prepared for the battle ahead. The penthouse suite became their war room, filled with legal documents, financial reports, and strategy boards. Lily, despite her initial shock and anger, had thrown herself into the fight with a determination that surprised even herself. Her street smarts and ability to think outside the box proved invaluable as they sought ways to outmaneuver Jeremiah. "What if we go public?" Lily suggested one evening as they pored over the company's financial records. "Not with the whole story, but with parts of it. Control the narrative before Jeremiah can—" Maxwell looked up, intrigued. "What do you mean?" Lily leaned forward, her eyes bright with excitement. "We spin it as a story of redemption. The prodigal son returns." She nodded at Alex. "And the ruthless businessman finds his heart. We make it about family, about second chances." Alex nodded slowly, catching on. "And about using the Rothschild wealth and influence for good. We could announce a new initiative for the company, something that aligns with Dad's last wishes." Maxwell sat back, a smile spreading across his face. "It's risky, but it just might work. Jeremiah won't expect us to go on the offensive like that." As they continued to refine their plan, Maxwell couldn't help but marvel at how seamlessly Lily had integrated herself into their world. She was no longer just the mother of his child, but a true partner in every sense of the word. Meanwhile, across town, Jeremiah was growing increasingly frustrated. His spies reported that the brothers and Lily rarely left the penthouse, and his attempts to dig up more dirt on their arrangement had hit a wall. "I want that girl isolated," he barked at his assistant. "Find a way to drive a wedge between her and my nephews. She's the weak link in their alliance." But Jeremiah had underestimated Lily's resilience and the strength of the bonds that had formed between her and the Rothschild brothers. As the date of the next board meeting approached, the meeting where Jeremiah planned to make his move, tension in the penthouse reached a fever pitch. Maxwell worked around the clock, calling in favors and shoring up support among the board members. Alex leveraged his contacts in the non-profit world to begin laying the groundwork for the company's new philanthropic initiative. And Lily, her pregnancy now in its final weeks, became the heart of their operation. She kept them grounded, reminding them what they were fighting for when the stress threatened to overwhelm them. One night, as they took a rare break from their planning, Maxwell found Lily on the balcony, gazing out at the city lights. "Penny for your thoughts?" he asked softly, coming to stand beside her. Lily smiled, her hand resting on her swollen belly. "Just thinking about how much has changed. A few months ago, I was sleeping on park benches. Now I'm helping plot corporate takeovers." Maxwell chuckled, then grew serious. "Lily, I can't thank you enough for everything. Not just for," he gestured to her stomach, "but for being here, for fighting alongside us." Lily turned to face him, her eyes searching his face. "Maxwell, I need to know. If we win this fight, if we secure the company and your family's legacy, what happens to us? To me and the baby?" Maxwell took her hands in his heart pounding. "Lily, I know I've done this all backwards. I know I hurt you with my lies. But these past few months, getting to know you, working together, feeling our child grow, it's changed everything." He took a deep breath, gathering his courage. "I love you, Lily, and I want us to be a real family. Not because of any arrangement or contract, but because I can't imagine my life without you in it." Lily's eyes filled with tears, a mix of joy and lingering uncertainty. "Max, I love you too. But can we really build a life together with all this hanging over us? Your uncle, the company, our very different backgrounds?" Maxwell pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. "We can if we face it together. You've shown me what true strength looks like, Lily. With you by my side, I feel like we can face anything." As they stood there, the city spread out before them, and their unborn child nestled between them. Both Lily and Maxwell felt a sense of peace settle over them. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as a team, as a family. But their moment of tranquility was short-lived. Suddenly, Alex burst onto the balcony, his face pale with shock. "Max, Lily, you need to see this," he said, holding out his tablet. On the screen was a breaking news report, the headline sending a chill down their spines. "Rothschild heir scandal. Corporate titan accused of baby buying scheme." The storm they had been preparing for had finally broken, and it was worse than they could have imagined. The next 48 hours were a blur of crisis management and damage control. The penthouse became a hive of activity, with lawyers, PR specialists, and trusted board members coming and going at all hours. Maxwell barely slept, fielding calls from panicked investors and issuing statements to the press. Alex worked tirelessly to salvage their philanthropic initiative, reaching out to contacts to garner support. And Lily, despite the stress of the situation and her advanced pregnancy, became their secret weapon in crafting a narrative that could sway public opinion. "We need to humanize this story," Lily insisted during one strategy session. "People see the Rothschild name and think of wealth and privilege. We need to make them see the real people behind it." Her suggestion led to a bold move, a televised interview with all three of them, telling their story in their own words. It was a risk, but one they felt they had to take. As they prepared for the interview, tensions ran high. Maxwell paced the room, running through potential questions and rehearsing his answers. Alex sat quietly, his usual calm demeanor strained by the pressure. And Lily, feeling the weight of their future resting on her shoulders, tried to quell the anxiety bubbling up inside her. Just before they were set to go on air, Maxwell pulled Lily aside. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his eyes searching hers. "Once we do this, there's no going back. Your life will never be the same." Lily took a deep breath, her hand instinctively going to her stomach. "I'm sure," she said firmly. "This is our family we're fighting for, all of us." The interview was a roller coaster of emotions. Maxwell spoke candidly about his initial motivations, his voice thick with regret as he admitted to the deception. Alex shared his journey from disillusioned son to passionate advocate for change within the company. And Lily, her quiet strength shining through, told her story of struggle and hope, of finding family in the most unexpected place. As the interview drew to a close, Maxwell made an announcement that sent shockwaves through the business world. "Effective immediately, I am stepping down as CEO of Rothschild Enterprises," he said, his voice steady despite the gravity of his words. "My brother Alex will be taking over, with a mandate to refocus our company on ethical investing and global philanthropy." The studio fell silent, the interviewer momentarily stunned. "And what will you do, Mr. Rothschild?" she finally asked. Maxwell reached out, taking Lily's hand in his. "I'm going to focus on what's truly important, my family. Lily and I are committed to raising our child together and to using our resources to help other families in need. We're establishing a foundation to support foster children and young parents struggling to make ends meet." As they left the studio, exhausted but cautiously optimistic, they were unprepared for the scene that greeted them. A crowd had gathered outside, but instead of the angry protesters they had feared, they found a mix of supporters and media. People held signs expressing support for their honesty and their new initiatives. "I think," Alex said, a note of wonder in his voice, "we might have actually pulled this off." But their relief was short-lived. As they made their way through the crowd, Lily suddenly doubled over, gasping in pain. "Max," she managed to say between gritted teeth, I think the baby's coming." In an instant, their carefully managed press appearance turned into chaos. Maxwell scooped Lily into his arms, his face a mask of panic and determination. Alex quickly cleared a path through the crowd, shouting for someone to call an ambulance. As they waited for the paramedics to arrive, Maxwell held Lily close, whispering words of encouragement. The flashing cameras and shouted questions faded into the background as they focused on each other and the new life that was about to enter the world. In that moment, surrounded by the media frenzy they had unleashed, Maxwell and Lily found a pocket of calm. Their eyes met, and a lifetime of understanding passed between them. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The ambulance arrived, its sirens cutting through the noise of the crowd. As the paramedics loaded Lily inside, Maxwell turned to his brother. "Alex, I need you to—" "Go," Alex said firmly, already pulling out his phone. "I'll handle everything here. You take care of Lily and that baby." Maxwell nodded gratefully, then climbed into the ambulance. As the doors closed and the vehicle pulled away, he took Lily's hand in his. "I'm right here," he said softly. "We're in this together." Lily managed a smile through her pain. "Together," she agreed. As the ambulance sped through the streets of New York, the next chapter of their unconventional family story was about to unfold. And somewhere across town, Jeremiah Rothschild watched the news coverage with a mixture of rage and disbelief, realizing that his carefully laid plans had just gone up in smoke. The game wasn't over yet, but the rules had most definitely changed. The maternity ward of New York Presbyterian Hospital was a far cry from the chaotic scene they had left behind. Here, in a private room filled with soft light and the gentle beeping of monitors, Lily lay exhausted but radiant, a tiny bundle cradled in her arms. Maxwell sat beside her, his eyes never leaving the perfect little face of his newborn daughter. Amelia Rose Rothschild had come into the world after 18 hours of labor, her lusty cries a testament to the fighting spirit she'd inherited from both her parents. "She's perfect," Maxwell whispered, gently stroking the baby's cheek. "Just like her mother." Lily smiled tiredly, leaning into Maxwell's side. "I think she has your nose," she teased. A soft knock at the door interrupted their peaceful moment. Alex poked his head in, his face breaking into a wide grin at the sight of the new family. "Is it safe to come in?" he asked. "There's someone here who'd like to meet the newest Rothschild." Before Maxwell or Lily could respond, the door opened wider to reveal Abraham Rothschild, looking frail but determined as he maneuvered his wheelchair into the room. "Dad?" Maxwell said, surprise and concern coloring his voice. "Should you be out of bed?" Abraham waved off his son's worry. "I wasn't about to miss meeting my granddaughter," he said gruffly, but his eyes were soft as they landed on the baby. Lily, sensing the importance of the moment, carefully passed Amelia to Maxwell, who brought her to his father. Abraham cradled the infant with a tenderness that belied his usual stern demeanor. "Hello, little one," he murmured. "Welcome to the family." He looked up at Maxwell and Lily, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "You've done well, both of you. This is what truly matters." The room fell silent, the weight of Abraham's words settling over them all. It was more than just approval of the baby. It was an acknowledgement of the new path the Rothschild family was forging. Alex cleared his throat, breaking the emotional moment. "I hate to bring up business at a time like this, but I thought you should know. The board voted this morning. Jeremiah's out. They've accepted the new direction for the company." Maxwell let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding. "And you? Are you ready to take on the role of CEO?" Alex nodded, a mix of determination and humility in his expression. "I am. But I'll need both of you. Your foundation, your ideas for ethical investing. They're going to be crucial in reshaping the company's image and its future." Lily spoke up, her voice tired but firm. "We're in this together, remember? All of us." Abraham handed the baby back to Lily, then turned to face his sons. "I owe you both an apology," he said. "I spent so many years focused on the wrong things. Money, power, continuing the Rothschild legacy as I understood it. But you've shown me what true legacy looks like." He reached out, grasping Maxwell's hand in one of his and Alex's in the other. "It's not about the wealth we accumulate or the power we wield. It's about the lives we touch, the changes we make in the world. You've taken the Rothschild name and given it new meaning. I couldn't be prouder." As if on cue, little Amelia let out a small cry, drawing everyone's attention back to her. Lily soothed her gently, and Maxwell felt his heart swell with love for his new family. "So," Alex said with a grin, "when can we expect the wedding?" Maxwell and Lily exchanged a look, a silent conversation passing between them. "Actually," Maxwell said, "we were thinking of doing something small. Just family. And soon," Lily added. "Very soon." 2 weeks later, on a crisp autumn morning, the Rothschild family gathered in Central Park, near the bench where Maxwell and Lily had first met. It wasn't a grand society wedding, but a small, intimate ceremony filled with love and new beginnings. As Maxwell and Lily exchanged vows, with baby Amelia cooing softly in Alex's arms and Abraham watching proudly from his wheelchair, they all felt the shift in their family's foundation. The Rothschild legacy was being redefined before their eyes. In his vows, Maxwell spoke of second chances and unexpected love. Lily, her eyes shining with tears, promised to face whatever challenges lay ahead as a team. And as they sealed their vows with a kiss, cheered on by their small but loving family, they knew that they had built something far more valuable than any fortune. A family bound by love, understanding, and a shared commitment to making the world a better place. The Rothschild name would go on, but with a new purpose. And little Amelia, born of an unconventional arrangement but surrounded by so much love, would grow up knowing that family is not defined by blood or wealth, but by the bonds we choose to forge and the love we choose to give. As the small wedding party made their way to a nearby restaurant for the reception, Maxwell and Lily lingered for a moment, looking at the bench where their story had begun. Who would have thought, Lily mused, that this is where we'd end up? Maxwell pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. I wouldn't change a thing, he said softly. Hand in hand, they turned to join their family, ready to write the next chapter of their story together. What did you think of the story? Please leave a comment with your opinion. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. I'm sure there will be new videos on this channel that will surprise you. Give it a like and activate the notification bell so you don't miss our next videos. See you soon.